All right, back with another video. Today we're going to be reacting to a video on Biden voters who regret voting for Joe Biden in 2020 and to give their current thoughts on what he's doing and why they have voters remorse. So let's get right into it. This video is courtesy of Fox News YouTube channel.
I voted for Biden back in 2020, and I seriously regret it.
In 2020, I voted for Joe Biden, and I now see that as a mistake.
I voted for Biden in 2020, and I definitely regret voting for him. I will not do it again.
Folks, the people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered a clear victory.
Growing up, I thought that Democrats were for everybody, especially specifically for Black people.
I grew up thinking the same thing for a very long time. For most of my life, I was told that Republicans are the racists, the pieces of garbage, blah, blah, blah. For most Black kids, that's how they grew up. Now, it's going to be a very small percentage of Black kids probably grew up, with more of a free thinking and more on policy. But policy it's just like, nah. Most of us have grown up to believe, vote Democrat, regardless. Don't worry about policy. Just keep the Democrat vote.
And I kind of had that. I was programmed in a sense with that Democratic, savior type of situation. Going into, the 2020 election, I was all for Biden. That's who I voted for. I was like, okay, Biden's gonna have change. He's for everyone. And I was underneath the impression that he was going to do what he was going to say he was going to do, and not.
If people had really did their homework on Joe Biden, this would have saved them a whole lot of heartache, man. It's like this man has a very dark past.
Be lying. I just found out the hard way, unfortunately, that Biden isn't who he says he is, and that it seems like Democrats, in a sense, they just want to keep us in the same spot, in the same place, more so dependent on them, dependent on the government.
And I'm actually glad more and more people are waking up to the Democrat Party's BS. I know I'm glad I did, because they're literally turning into the party of pure insanity. Now, that's not me saying Republicans are perfect. I don't put them on a pedestal at all. So don't get it twisted. But the Democrats have really shown their rear ends since the first day Biden got in office. And I'm glad more American people are waking up to what it really is.
And I just feel like, as a whole, we're just stagnant. Black people, we're kind of trapped in the vicious cycle of believing what Democrats tell us. And that's what I was for my whole entire life. I believed everything they told me. I believe they're going to make things better. And if you look at the track record of history, they really haven't. They haven't done anything for us.
Of course not. They were the ones who partook in destroying most of the Black community by starting way back in the 60s with Lyndon B. Johnson introducing welfare to Black families, and that led to kicking the Black man out of the house, which created a huge influx of single parent households in the Black community. Which that was the very beginning of the turnaround of the Black community, because before then, most Black people were in family units. They were getting married and things like that, and that was the start of it. Now, throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that's when you start to see the results of it.
For anybody, really.
I started noticing that I made a huge mistake voting for Biden, really just a couple of months after Biden took office. And it was a combination of a number of things. Part of it was just the handling of the pandemic. It was the handling of the economy. It's inflation. It's because I voted for someone who's essentially furthering Marxist ideas in our country that I regret voting for him. I mean, it really was a terrible choice. I'm inclined to think that there are still Democrats who believe in who believe in agency and autonomy of the individual. I think that, but I think a lot of the party has been taken over and appropriated by Marxists, and that's not a controversial thing to say. It just simply, a person simply has to look at the policies. A person simply has to, well, read Paulo Freire or Herbert Marcuse and then see all of the academic papers coming out of ed schools that cite those two Marxist scholars.
So
Yeah, they've really done a good job of preaching Marxism onto the youth, especially with these far left-leaning teachers that have pretty much flooded most public schools. Now, I thought it was part of the job description. If you're going to be a teacher, you're supposed to keep your political views to yourself. You're going to teach your kids about politics and all that and things like that. But it seems like you have a lot of public school teachers who want to push their own political ideology on other people's children. That's what's got a lot of parents mad right now at the public school systems.
back in 2020, it was the first time I ever actually decided to vote, and I did vote for Joe Biden because of all the promises he had made. His main point was he's going to help the poor people, but and that the stimulus check. But
yeah, people are really paying for those stimulus checks right now. That's just because all that money was printed by the Federal Reserve. It wasn't the money. The money literally just came out of nowhere, printed by the Federal Reserve, which is kickstarted this massive inflation that's going on right now.
We didn't get the full stimulus check that he had promised us. He didn't keep any of his promises. He's not helping the poor. The poor are getting poorer. I'm the poor, and I'm getting poorer, so I can barely afford to eat. Groceries are expensive. Gas is expensive. Like, how is gas $5 a gallon? Couch surf right now. I kind of stay with my boyfriend and his mom. My son lives with my parents. Like, I don't want my son to have like a homeless mom, But it seems like,
man, that's crazy. This young lady has to couch surf from place to place just because of Joe Biden's policy, and people shouldn't have to live like that. It did not have to get this bad, because I'm telling you, most Americans, because I go outside and talk to people about this all the time, and people just aren't buying the whole Russia thing anymore about the high gas prices. No one believes that. Like most of the American people don't believe that anymore. It's not because of Russia, the high gas prices. It was doing that before this whole war even started.
everyone's going to be homeless soon. Like, it's so scary where the world is going. And it makes me seem like, what kind of future do our kids have?
I used to be a Biden supporter. I'm definitely not a Biden supporter anymore. I was anti-Trump. I thought he was a horrible person. I found out completely false. I believe that he was racist, he was a sexist, a womanizer, just all these terrible things. Just from the news and media lying on him.
I feel like I'd been lied to by the media, telling us Biden's the answer to all the country's problems. Like, that's what I saw him as when I voted for him. And they made Trump kind of the bad guy in the media. But things were a lot better when he was president.
I cannot see any reason why I would be voting Democrat in the next election. As far as looking at 2024, I'm hoping DeSantis runs, and he will have my vote. If Trump runs again and wins the primary, he will have my vote as well.
I would actually, I see myself definitely voting for Trump if he were to run.
I won't be voting for Biden again. That's for sure.
Well, that's the end of that. And with that being said, here are my final thoughts. People are just tired of what the Democrat Party has turned the United States into, because it's affecting their pockets. People can't afford to, do the basic necessities anymore: food, gas. People are couch surfing, having to, some people have to live in tents too, like they showed in the footage. But people are just tired. They want something different. They don't want this anymore. They don't want another 4 years of this. I know I certainly don't.